the meaning of task, we should understand first that task-based language teaching. There are some words that is used: activity-based learning, learning by doing, project method. So task-based language teaching is based on all these things. First, we should understand what is a task. Task, what is a task? Tell me. Tasks in a day-to-day conversation and day-to-day life. What is a task? Some managers, secretary make a list of tasks to be done today. So what is that? In fact, the work to be done. Okay. It is a list of
Yes,
tasks,
sir.
means the list of work to be completed. Clear? But each task has a specific goal. If you complete the goal, the task is completed. If you don't complete the goal, the task is incomplete. Clear? So, in the context of language learning is basically a communication, learning how to communicate. So, a task in the reference of language learning is a communicative activity in which you learn some aspect of communication. So, it should be the activity or the task should be related to learning the communication through language. So, in reference to education, task involves learners existing language resources, means the learner's existing knowledge of language that will help him create new sentences, new words, new dialogues, new feedback, and this will result in new output after he complete a task. For example, if you play any language game with the help of learners, can you play a language game without help of learners? Tell me. Can you play problem solving game? Can you play puzzles without the help of learners, without involving learners? Tell me. No, right? So, and a task always involves learners. In other methods, teacher might be teaching, it might be one-way communication, but the task always involves learners and his previous knowledge. A task may be defined in other words by Ellis that it is a work plan that involves pragmatic process of language. Now, what is pragmatic process? The real process of learning means is as if you will be using the language in real life, practical life. So, when the learner is involved in a task, he is actually around a real language use situation. He is using his existing language resources, his attention to meaning. This will result in completion of a product, an outcome, which can be assessed later on. Nunan says a task as a piece of classwork which involves learners in comprehending, manipulating, producing, or interacting in the target language. For example, you are teaching English language. The task will include comprehending English, manipulating the words, sentences, words, and using appropriately the existing knowledge, producing new words, sentences, etc., interacting with other students and teachers. Basically, a task is concentrated, focused on meaning rather than the structure. So we can easily say that it is not a grammar based or rule based or form based method actually, but it is a meaning based method, means how you use the words in appropriate situations, how you frame sentences. That is basically the aim of tasks, to enable students to communicate, use the language in that way. David Noonan gave two types of tasks. Major, there are many types of tasks. Target tasks refer to doing something outside the classroom and in the real world. Second is pedagogical tasks, which usually take into classroom. They are performed inside the classroom. I give you example of pedagogical class, means information gap activity, opinion gap, reasoning, personal task, role play, jigsaw. These all the things can be uh, organized in the classroom situation. But if we want to give a student a task like painting a fence, buying something from bazaar, making a ticket reservation, borrowing a library book from a library, typing a letter, and these are the tasks that are outside the classroom, right? Rod Ellis gave some interesting characteristics of a class. So, how a task should be. First, it should be pragmatic, as I told you. It should have the practical, real situation. Second, there should be a gap. There should be a gap in the activity, and students need to fill up the gap. The gap may be of information gap. The gap may be of reasoning gap. The gap may be of opinion gap. Means students need to fill the gap. Now, fill in the blanks is an information gap. Now, reasoning gap, you have to reason first, then you fill up the gap. Opinion gap, some questions ask for your opinion. So, the participants third is choose existing his language resources. Means if you need to complete an activity or a task, student must use the existing linguistic resources, his vocabulary, his knowledge of grammar, right? His knowledge of pronunciation, his fluency, etc. A task has a clearly defined outcome, means at the end of a task, a student should learn this. Perfectly, it should be defined. Let me give you some examples of information gap, reasoning gap, and opinion gap activity. Now, what is an information gap task? It involves a transfer of given information from one person to another, or from one form to another, or from one place to another, generally calling for the decoding or encoding of information from or into language. One example is pair work, in which each member of the pair has a part of total information, means you have the information, for example, an incomplete picture, and attempts to convey it verbally to the other. Another example is completing a tabular representation with information available in a given piece of text. For example, a text is given and an incomplete table is given behind the at the below part of the text. Now you need to read the text, understand the text, and complete the table which is incomplete somewhere. Some information is missing, right? So this activity, you need to select the relevant information and fill up the gaps in the information, right? For example, student in pairs. There is an activity called pair work in which two students communicate with each other. Now, what will they do? One student will ask and another student will answer the question. The question might be about weekly schedule. So, what will happen? A student will ask. Now, there is an information gap. When the second student will answer, the information gap is filled. Second is the reasoning gap. You know very well what is reasoning. Before answering a question, you need to think a lot. That is reasoning. Reasoning gap activity involves you derive some new information from given information. Now, direct answer is not there. You need to have some inference, some deduction, some practical reasoning, understanding of the relationships and the patterns. You know, there is reasoning questions in our examination, competitive exams. You know this, right? For example, one example is working out a teacher's timetable on the basis of given class timetables. Means there are 5 to 6 class timetable are given. Based on these timetables, you need to prepare a timetable of a particular teacher, right? Another is deciding what course of action is best. For example, the cheapest or the quickest for a given purpose within a given time. Right? This is almost like a puzzle, right? You need to find out which is the best answer, and you for that you have to do some logical reasoning. You can ask your students to work on a timetable and on some variables, and you can give some problems and ask them to solve the problems. Third one is opinion gap activity. Now, what is an opinion? Opinion is obviously a personal thought, personal feeling, personal attitude, right? If there is a story and you need to complete the story based on your views, your opinion, you may complete the story, but it is a depends on different students understanding, personal attitude and feelings. There will be different completion of a same story, right? So this activity may involve using factual information, some of the arguments to define. For example, essay writing is an opinion gap activity. You need to give some arguments, logical presentation of your answer. There will not be perfect answer. You cannot evaluate an essay like that. And essay writing is an opinion gap activity because students as an individual are giving their opinions on a topic. For example, if you have a debate in your classroom on any topic, it is an opinion gap activity, right? You are asking, and you are trying to find out the opinions of the students. There are many more examples which you easily understand, right? For example, ask students to create a presentation, ask students to make a video or short movie on a topic. For example, a small role play or his review on something. Ask your students to write a small article, small text on a topic, a small newsletter article. Ask the students to act out to role play in a skit, right? Playing language games, debates, discussion, interview, report writing, narration, review a book review, asking or giving advice on a certain topic, writing a letter, selling or buying, doing everything with the help of instructions means how to prepare tea, how to prepare lemon sharbat, designing a small brochure, designing a menu, preparing a curriculum vitae, job interview, preparing for a job interview, writing a reference material, right? There are plenty of such examples. You give a topic to a student and ask them to list out words. Means, for example, if I say kitchen, list out words related to kitchen. If I say politician, list out words related to politicians. If I say some of the heritage places in Gujarat, list out the places. If you may ask some of the actions means to write down your daily schedule, right? Then ordering and sorting out something. Ordering means you order somebody to do something, you command somebody to do something. Then classification activity means sorting out activity is the best, right? Categorizing different things according to different categories. Second is comparing two pictures, comparing two descriptions. You know, there is famous exercise of finding similarities and differences between two pictures. Yes, it is a famous activity. Comparing two pictures, problem solving, sharing personal experience about anything, your opinions, your visits, your personal experience related to something, your achievements. You just share your personal experience. Some of the creative tasks, right? Now you are clear about the task. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now, what is task-based language learning, or task-based language teaching, or task-based instruction? These are the other words used for it. It is basically using authentic language, means the real language, to complete a meaningful task in target language, right? As I told you, there are plenty of examples of such activity: visiting a doctor, consulting an interview, conducting an interview, calling customer service for help through a phone. It is a task-based language teaching. As far as education is concerned, as I told you, it is related to communication, deciding something, solving a problem, designing, organizing something, or telling someone to do something, includes under task. So TBLT is a teaching approach. It focuses on giving learners different tasks, actively engaging them in the task, and practice language in these situations, in these tasks. Then, based on these situations, they measure the language outcomes as that the output of the task. For example, if there is a speaking task, it will develop students' ability to speak fluently and accurately, communicating with others. So TBLT is an approach which offers students material. It gives students material that they have to engage in order to achieve a goal-based task. They have to complete the task. You know, some of the tasks need some material to complete the task. So teacher give them the learning material, right? Task-based learning may use a lesson structure, right? It may incorporate different activities to solve the task. So it may be called a project-based learning as well, right? So it is somehow related to project method, isn't it? Task-based language learning, it is an approach of planning learning materials and teaching sessions based around a task. Now we can know in the grammar translation method, direct method, we are going ahead with a content, but here we go ahead with some task. To complete a task, begin a new task, right? According to Richards and Rogers, task-based language learning focuses on communication through task, right? Students engage themselves in a task, they feel very interesting, they carry out the task, they use the target language during the performance, during the task. This is how they learn the language. In India, it was first proposed by Indian scholar Prabhu. It was popularized in Bangalore, India. The main objective of the method was to teach learners communicative competence, which is the aim of communicative language teaching as well, communicative competence. Now, if you are put in a task, you will definitely learn to use the authentic language in real life situation. So, different types of this communicative activity, task based language activity, help you learn these things. There are 7 principles that has given behind task based language teaching. As I told you, there are different principles behind different methods. So, what are the thoughts? First is scaffolding. Scaffolding is nothing but help. You can see in the slide, without scaffolding, can anyone go ahead upside? See in the picture. Can anyone go in the upper stairs to complete the task of building construction? That is called scaffolding in the form of, in the context of education. Slowly you support, give student a supportive framework, so it will uplift his learning, right? Help him with some material, provide him some language learning material. So scaffolding is very important. Second is task dependency. So one task should grow out of and build upon the ones that have already gone before. Means one task completed, it should automatically evolve another task from that task. Third principle is recycling. Means recycling language maximizes the opportunity for learning activities, right? Relearning the same thing, right? Active learning. Students must be active to learn the language. That is the principle. Integration, right? Language and communicative competence both are important. Means grammar is also important. Means fluency and accuracy both are important. So there should be a clear integration between the two, linguistic form and communicative function and the meaning. Creation. Language should be encouraged to move from only reproductive machine like learning to creative language use. Means you see in structural approach, in grammar translation approach, on the audio lingual method, you see students are just copying what teachers are teaching. In even in community language learning as well. So task-based language teaching is related to creativity, creative language use. Then reflection. Last principle is learners should think about, learners should get the opportunity to reflect what they have done in the task, how well they have done the task, what have they learned from the task, what were the difficult parts of the task, what were the easy parts of the task. So reflection will help him learn the language. These are the characteristics based on the discussion of TBLT. As I told you, students are using language creatively. They are not learning language like machine. They are going through task. They are using their brain, their pre-knowledge to complete the task. There is a focus on relationship that is almost right like a real world situation, right? Some meaning is always there in the task. Assessment is also based on task outcome. This approach basically can be called a student centered approach because task is being done by the students. The main part of the class is task. Assessment is based on task, as I told you. What is the aim of the task? Students should learn all the language skills, all the 4 skills, based on real world activities. Can I give you some examples of real world activities? Decorating classroom with slogans, writing simple captions below the pictures, writing a notice to parents, healthcare checkup. These are the food price survey, mock court, writing a report of an event, making a shopping list, preparing a wall newspaper for the class, right? So task-based learning, the language, content is defined, means if you organize, if you well plan a task, content is defined. Grammar is not an important issue here. The syllabus is not based on grammar. Students just need to complete the task. What is the role of a teacher? Teacher is just facilitator as he was in the other methods. In communicative language teaching, he is the facilitator. In the same way, at TBLT, he is the facilitator. He just organizes the task. He exposes the task to the students. As and when needed, he will help learners. If he will help to frame sentences, that's okay. But he is just the facilitator. Student will be creating and using the language. It is an approach from holistic to specifics. Means you are learning in the bigger picture, then slowly you are learning specific aspects of a language. Here it means you are not first learning the rules and examples. You are first going through the examples, then you are learning the rules, right? The language they learn passes through different stages: the drafting, the report, rehearsal, and final practice. So it will help develop the language capacity of the students. What are the merits? It is suitable for every age student or any background students because tasks can be easier, tasks can be very difficult or creative. So it is suitable for all the type of students. It is applicable to the lower class to the higher class, right? There will be more exposure to knowledge. For example, in structural approach, the student will get exposure to different type of structures. Here, students will get exposure to real life language, all the sorts of vocabulary and all the sorts of grammar used in real life, all the sorts of phrases, idioms that is used in daily life situations. So this will give better exposure to students, right? Because students are have to get involved to learn the language, student will pay attention to the activity. If he doesn't take part into activity or he doesn't complete a task, he will never learn the language. So he will be actively participating in the task. Student will be learning a range of lexical phrases, different idioms, items, collocations, patterns, as well as forms, different types of forms of words. This approach encourages students to be more ambitious when they complete the means. Once students complete one task, he will get motivated to complete the more tasks. If the students are weak, students teacher will give easier tasks. Student will definitely get motivated. You know, in structural approach, students get demotivated by the machine learning of the approach, and he might get monotonous. It is a psychological process, right? Because student complete the task, he will feel happy. If he feels success, then he will go on to another task. Students' need is taken into account while creating the task. Students' level is also right. So it is easy for the teacher to organize a class with activity based on the level of the students. So it is a student center activity full of meaningful communication, language skill building. Teaching from abstract knowledge to real world application is the best thing about this. Means only teaching about abstract knowledge is not good thing. Real world tasks help student to learn everything. There are plenty of variety of activities can be done by the teacher, right? Uh, some of the demerits of the TBLT. TBLT requires high level of creativity, from the part of the teacher and the student, because preparing a task, planning a task is not an easy thing. Before jumping into a class, students should have some fluency, some sort of knowledge to complete the task, the background knowledge of vocabulary and structure. Second thing, individual attention may not be paid to students, so student may be fluent, but he may not be accurate. TBLT requires resources, means language materials, language resources. Textbook is not enough for TBLT approach. Textbook can give you the description of task, but to conduct actual task, you need some material. Task-based instruction is not teacher-centered. It requires individual groups responsibility to complete the task. If students are not committed to the task, it will just be a formality, right? So task-based instruction is difficult to implement. It is not easy. On the part of students, because the task is an overall picture of something, it is difficult to measure the outcome, right? Because different students are performing at different level in different tasks. Evaluation is difficult. It cannot be evaluated through traditional written test. So TBLT type of instruction maybe may not be that effective compared to traditional methods. It may be good, but every time we have limitations that out of class exposure is not possible due to our time constraint in our schools, because task takes too much time. Simple tasks will be easily completed by the students, but what about the challenging task? Only some students will complete the challenging task. Other students will copy paste the answers. Students learn the fluency, but students don't learn the accuracy, right? So grammar knowledge is weak in task-based language learning. Everything left is left to the teacher. Teacher has to teach this. For example, there are some examples given at primary stage how a task-based curriculum should be. There can be diagrams, formation, naming parts of a diagram, numbers, letters of the alphabet to be written, drawing geometrical figures, clock, faces, based on verbal instructions, you draw something, positioning your hands on a clock to show a time in a calendar or month in a calendar, calculating days and weeks, reading a map, reading school timetables. These are the simple activities at the primary level. If you observe in your current textbook, 9, 10 standard, there is a word you use pre-task. Do you know this word pre-task?
Yes, sir.
So pre-task is a task. If students complete the task will help him go ahead in the upcoming task. So that is pre-task, because the thing that they learn in pre-task will be used in the main task of that lesson. It is related to that. So when you plan a task, these are the stages: pre-task, then the actual students do the task in group, plan for the day, They do this, they plan, they compare the ideas. Then each group rehearses the presenting their plan. The teacher walks around, helps students to have a problem, those who have problems. Teacher helps them in grammatical problems, language items. Then reporting, each group leader will report what they have done to complete the task, or individual students may be allowed to report in the written form or oral presentation. Then post task. Teacher may give a small exercise to check if they really have completed a task. May give an assignment as well as a homework. So this is how a complete cycle of a task: pre-task, task, planning, report, and post-task. So this is all about task-based language. These are some photos from current textbooks. These are the tasks in current textbook.